G'day fellas. Well, hope everybody had a good Christmas. Happy New Year. Here we go. So, if we remember, I'm obsessed with full foot pumps. So here's a vintage pump, and this is one of the failed prints that I was working on the other week before Christmas, and just to check that I've got things right, I've just popped it on there to see what the relationships are, and well, that's a pretty good fit, right? It's just held in there, it's perfect. So all these things fit like this. So the other pumps I was doing the other day, I've printed out the actual logo. I've left the V and the arch off because, well, I just presume that's going to be way too hard to print on this little printer, on an FDM printer. But this was my first experiment, gluing the actual logo on, and you know, that's pretty close. It's a little larger than a normal pump. That's not gonna really fit in frame, but it's a little larger than I'd like, but yeah, that's easy enough to fix. And I've made this, which is just an alignment gauge. The first thing I realized is that these things are so small that actually gluing them together without getting glue everywhere is going to be a real pain in the neck. So this will just sit over and sort of hold the logo in there, and it's not got any proper registration marks on this one, so you do have to still make some sort of alignment, otherwise it'll go everywhere, but that's good. I can fine tune those models now that I know that the concept's working, and we can look at the rest of the shoot. Okay, so this is our vintage pump, and these are hen's teeth. You cannot reliably get these anymore. You can find vintage Reeboks with these pumps in them on places like eBay, but honestly, I want to see if we can actually make our own. And this is just straight up TPU, the same as those other pieces. This is a $5 medical pump that you can get off eBay, and I'm just using this because it's just easier to use. This is where I stopped. I did these a couple of months ago, but as you can see, there's a whole box of failed iterations here. But we can make almost the entire thing with 3D prints like this. You can see this one, we've got a 3D printed bubble, again just straight out of TPU, and this pumps up, and the only problem that I'm having with these is they're not airtight. So yeah, I think at some point I'll have to revisit these and just tweak some of the settings, because basically these work but they have slow leaks, so they're not functional. But I think what I'll do is I'll put these in some of these the next upper I make, because it'll bulk it out, and these are a lot stiffer than the originals, if that makes sense. So these are very supple and soft, whereas this is almost rigid. This is the sort of rigidity that I want from my leather. Unfortunately, I can't afford that. But anyway, we can print all of this stuff and make whatever pumps we want, in theory, as long as we can get this to work, these to seal up. So this is an earlier one, and I've got a smaller weld seam. So yeah, we're going backwards through time here. So here's an earlier one where I made the weld seam really wide, and this pump one is very thick, so it doesn't really pump up. I also had banding issues. Anyway, I've done a whole bunch of these. Here's one that's cut out. That might be good to use because it's cut out already. Got a couple here. So these work. I'd give these 80 out of 100. They work 80%. But yeah, they don't actually hold pressure, which is going to be a pain in the neck. But from what I can tell, these will hold pressure. And the only downside is they're a little stiffer than the originals. But yeah, that's a good one. The only thing I wasn't able to print is these little red things that are inside. They are the little one-way valves, these little red things, the one-way valves, and I had to purchase them off eBay. They're, I think they're components out of like a two-stroke chainsaw. They're called duckbill valves. They're silicone duckbill valves. I think these were 3 mils or 2 mils or something. They're pretty small. And I just couldn't think of a way to print one-way valves and actually have them work, although I did try. And we're just going back through these. So yeah, one of the clever aspects of printing these things is the buttressing. So we're basically printing in vase mode and just spiraling the print head up to get these. Some of my other experiments were with one-way valves. So here's one of these little duck valves, little duck bills that's not in something, and you can see it's just a little nipple, and there's a invisible little slot cut into there, and when air goes through this way, it goes through no worries. But when air tries to come back the outside, the air pressure actually closes that duck bill. So that's how that one-way valve works. It's not how they were done in the original Reebok pumps, but it's a fine way to do it. And here are just some little pipe things, release valves, all sorts of little things. But as you'll notice, this is just the tongue portion of the full foot pump. So where's the rest of it? Well, I've only got one print because I figured if I can't get the tongue to work, there's no point in printing out the rest. But here's the rest of the pump, and that printed pretty well. And as you can see, it's a bit distorted. It's been a box for a week, so it's got a bit of a fold in it. But I printed that just in a nice crescent, just like a dam basically, and it printed really nicely. But yeah, I'm not convinced that it's going to hold air. So I'm going to cut this out and use it in my next test upper. Because I'm pretty sure this pump chamber won't work. But it'll add some much needed rigidity to my upper. Which is something that the cheap imitation materials that I'm using is really not giving the shoe any sort of structure. Just floppy flipping sandals, which is not good. This stuff is not fun to cut, I tell you. The bigger bits are a bit easier than the smaller bits. Phew. Yeah, cutting's fun. I tell you what, pattern cutting's all about cutting. If you can't cut good, forget it. I guess the only other thing to show you is the white pumps that I did the other week. I cut them out. So yeah, got number 1 and 2. So this is the second one. So yeah, and I'm not going to use these straight away. I can do a lot of things with these. They're sort of like, you know, I got 4 experiments to run. Plus I've got a pair of these, which I still have to glue together. But yeah, that, and I've got all the pieces cut out for the next above the rim. I'll probably be stitching that up. But I've also printed out heel counters. The heel counters I've printed out. So we've got 2 iterations. Number 1s, these printed out really terribly. Again, just TPU. And they'll, you know, gives me 2 pairs to muck around and make rubbish shoes with. But yeah, when I make a proper one, I'll have to work out how to do that neater. So this is the original above the rim that I did the other week that I documented really well, and we're calling this one the Mark 1 pattern because this is the Mark 1. So I've taken it off the last, and this is basically just going to hang around. I'm not going to throw it out straight away because it's a good reference to see where the evolution of this pattern, especially because I'm trying to, you know, remember how to do these things. So here is the version 2, and I'll stitch this one up. It's on the last. I'll take some photos and post them later, but this is not a very good upper, and it suffers from all the same mistakes, and I've made some new mistakes in this one. First off, the soft material means that it's dragging everything down, right? I've lasted it just on a piece of cardboard because this is not a real shoe, but yeah, I think I've got the character a little bit better with the side here, but there's still a lot of things that need to change. So if we compare, probably can't get the 2-inch shot. Go up a little bit more. Can't really get them in frame. But anyway, I got the character a little bit closer. We're not following things exactly because let it be hard to make a high top. Well, because I'm making a high top. The soft material, I think, is betraying what's going on here. I do have to modify these 2 moon shapes. It's obviously come way far forward and it's a lot thinner on the original than what I've ended up with. But yeah, we're close enough. Again, I made some mistakes. I left out a few reinforcement material pieces on this one, so it's stretched a lot in the quarter. You can see these eyelets have just distorted all over the place. But yeah, other than that, it's not too bad. The sewing machine's let me down again. Not the sewing machine's fault, but it's not the right machine for the job. I can't see where I'm going. But yeah, I'm going to try and get the camera on when I stitch the next one up, which is going to be basically this pattern again, but with all the reinforcement, and I'll put that pump in, this 3D printed pump in it, just to see how it fits, because it'll change the character of the shoe a lot. It should fit. I'm not worried about this off center. It seems like it's a bit short, but it should be because it's going inside. You've got to allow for the inside tracks, which are the lining and the sponges and stuff, to be smaller than the outside tracks, which are the outside track is the leather, the upper, the actual upper. But yeah, that's where we're at. I'm gonna just stitch the next one together. I'll put one of those 3D printed pumps in there, so it'll actually have the character. It's a bit hard to really get the same character with this, even though it's the same shape, because the character actually comes from the pump inside, which is why we're going to stick this in there. But anyway, fellas, stay tuned, and yeah, we'll be back later.